Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. And before we begin, we are going to acknowledge that we're in the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples in the Huron-Robinson Treaties area. We recognize the long history of First Nations and Métis peoples on this land and show respect for them today. As we're learning from our First Nation partners, I want to stress the importance of accepting our responsibility to take care of Mother Earth, her plants, her animals, and our shared peoples. We look to each other and the elders of both nations as a source of inspiration, guidance, and the living memory of our communities. As settlers, we are grateful for the opportunity to meet here, and we thank all of the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. So I'll call this meeting to order and ask for approval of the agenda. There are two items that came on your addendum. The first being in the open part of the meeting, item 7G for a variance request for signage, and then the addition of issue on the closed agenda for the Maple Lake Association discussion in the closed agenda. So with those two changes, could I have approval of the agenda? Thank you. And is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? No? So I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adopt the minutes of the regular and closed session meetings of council held June 3rd as circulated. Could I have a mover? Mario. And a seconder, Terry. All in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn the regular meeting to hold a public meeting for the following matter, and that's consent application number B 2024-0007-M for Miller. Could I have a motion to adjourn? Ted and Terry. All in favor? Thank you. Council will now hold a public meeting for a proposed consent application. In accordance with the Planning Act, Council will consider all matters placed before it prior to granting a consent. If a person or public body who files an appeal of a decision of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin in respect of a proposed consent does not make written submissions to the Council before it provides or refuses to provide a provisional consent, the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss the appeal. No one other than the prescribed persons may appeal an application under the provisions of the Planning Act. If they do not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin prior to the decision of Council, then the Ontario Land Tribunal may dismiss the appeal. The purpose of consent application number B 2024-0007-M for Miller is to permit a lot addition. I now ask the clerk to state the method by which the notice of that meeting was provided and the dates on which that notice was provided.
Notice of the public meeting was, provided by posting the property on May 9th, 2024, posting on the Township of Seguin's website, and by regular mail on June 3rd, 2024. Notice therefore considered provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act.
Has the township received any correspondence with respect to this application?
Correspondence has been received from the Ministry of Transportation, Ontario.
There's no one present in the council chambers who wish to speak. Has anyone registered to speak to this application via electronic participation?
No one has registered to speak to this application by electronic.
Does council have any questions? I see Brady there to answer any, if we have any. No questions? Thank you. The council will now close the public meeting. So I have a motion that comes out of that the public meeting held for the following matter is hereby closed and the regular meeting is hereby reconvened. A motion. Ken, Mario. All in favor? this comes out of it, right? And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby grant provisional approval to consent application number B 2024-0007-M for Miller, subject to the conditions set out in the decision. Could I have a motion? Ken and Mary? All in favor? Thank you. And we move to delegations, and I see Oscar on the screen. Thank you for joining us. So I will turn the meeting over to you and Michelle.
Thank you very much, Michelle. I'm not sure if you wanted to say something first.
No, I don't think so. We've gone over the financial statements in the past, so I'm interested in hearing what you have to say.
Members of council, good afternoon. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to be here today to present the audited findings and financial statements for the township for the year ended December 31st, 2023. So just in terms of our audit and some of the highlights, if I may, our audit was conducted in accordance with Canadian auditing standards. And these are the rules that govern how auditors undertake these types of examinations. What you'll notice is the audit opinion that's provided indicates that the financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. And materiality is the threshold of errors that, from an audit perspective, we're able to absorb before we either require the financial statements to be adjusted for the errors, or we change our opinion. So consistent with not-for-profit organizations, materiality for municipalities is generally calculated as a percentage of either expenses or revenues. In the for-profit realm, it's generally on net income, but because there isn't a net income motivation, if you will, for municipalities, we do look at revenues or expenses. We typically don't do assets because of the investment that the municipalities have with respect to infrastructure. So we've calculated materiality at 3% of the prior year's expenses, which yields materiality of $567,000. Now, members of council, we use materiality for a number of different purposes. We use it, for example, to calculate our sample sizes. But for the purposes of council, what I would suggest, ladies and gentlemen, is the most relevant use of materiality is it drives what's known as our posting threshold. And this is the level above which, if we do have any errors that are uncorrected, we have to report them to council at this meeting. So it's calculated as 5% of materiality, or an amount of $28,300. So just to put it in perspective, that is about 0.1% of your current year's revenue. And that is basically the level of precision that we have from an audit perspective. Very happy to say, council, that there are no uncorrected differences above our posting threshold. So we haven't had to eat into our materiality at all. So we are prepared to issue an unqualified audit opinion on your financial statements. And there's really three things that we need to do. One is we need to obtain council's approval of the financial statements today. So under Canadian auditing standards, once council approves the financial statements, we're good to finalize. We do need to receive a management representation letter. This is an attestation from your staff that they've provided us with all of the requested information, haven't failed to disclose any information. And then there's just a little bit of final assembly that we have to do to update our file to the council approval. You will notice from an audit opinion, in the event that you are comparing it on a year-over-year basis, we do make reference to a new accounting standard with respect to asset retirement obligations. And so there's a couple of places in the audit opinion where we disclose this. We've also changed last year's numbers because from an implementation perspective, the adoption of the new accounting policy went backwards in time, as if you've always had it. So you'll see that some of the comparative figures have actually changed. And in the financial statements in note 2 specifically, there's a long explanation of these changes. So for the information of council, and we'll get to those changes, but just from a highlights perspective, there were no areas of significant risks that we've identified that have changed from the prior year from our planned approach. Our approach, we were able to execute as planned. And so our approach involves a number of different audit sources. We predominantly do what's known as substantive testing, and this is vouching to source documentation. We do substantive analytics, which is trend analysis and drawing relationships to predict values and comparing that to actuals. We do rely in certain instances on management experts. So for example, to calculate the asset retirement obligation on your liability, there's an engineering firm that had provided a report with respect to closure costs, so we relied on that. And then we do limited control testing as well. As I've mentioned, there were no uncorrected audit differences above our posting threshold, so our audit opinion is basically clean. It's as good as it gets. And we hadn't identified any weaknesses from an internal controls perspective. So the audit really has gone well. Just in terms of the change in accounting standards, and I just wanted to highlight this briefly to council, there are 5 new standards that have come into force. The first 4 standards deal with financial instruments, foreign currency translation, and the like. It creates the requirement for a new statement where applicable. But at the end of the day, none of these standards actually impacted your financial statements. These are probably more relative to larger places like the City of Toronto, for example, but nothing that impacted the Township of Seguin. What did impact the township is the last standard related to asset retirement obligations. And what an asset retirement obligation or an ARO is where you have a regulatory or a legislative requirement to remediate sites at the end of their useful lives. And so in the case of Seguin, there's a creation of asset retirement obligations for 3 things. One is certain of the buildings that you own are suspected of having or are known to have asbestos. And so under the Environmental Protection Act, there is a requirement for you to remediate asbestos at the end of its useful life. You do have a landfill, and so landfills under the certificate of approval that you have, plus the Environmental Protection Act, there's a requirement to close and maintain the landfills to monitor them after closure. And then lastly, aggregate pits. So there are 4 gravel pits within the municipality. Under the Aggregates Act, there is a requirement for you to remediate them once you're done. Now, there was old accounting rules relating to this, but there's very different changes that impact this. First off, under the old standard, there was a standard for contaminated sites that required you to book an asset retirement obligation unless the property was in productive use. So to the extent that you had a building that had asbestos in it, to the extent that you had a gravel pit that required remediation, as long as you were using it, you didn't have to set up the liability. So because of that, there were no obligations set up in the past, with the exception of your landfill. Now that productive use exemption no longer applies. And so you're now booking liabilities for assets that you've never booked in the past. Lastly, in the past with your landfill, there was always a liability, but what the old standard used to say was, if you were 50% full in terms of capacity, you only recognized 50% of the liability. Under the new standard, there is no proration for capacity. And so what you'll find, members of council, is the liability has gotten larger. And the reason why it's gotten larger is twofold. One is you're booking a liability for assets that you never booked in the past. And in the case of your landfill, you're no longer prorating for capacity. So in your financial statements at December 31st, 2023, there's 3 asset retirement obligations that are in place. So for your facilities that require asbestos abatement, the liability is just under $400,000. For your landfill, it's about $124,000. And for your aggregate pits, it's about $80,000. So these are the liabilities that are now sitting on your books today. As I've mentioned, it's gone backwards in time. So what you'll find is your surplus this year on an accumulated basis is actually lower than last year because you booked these liabilities, which are like past expenses. And so, council, I just would like to provide you with a bit of perspective on this liability, what it is and what it isn't. So this is the present value of a liability that you are going to incur 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. And so because of that, council, I want to make it very clear, there's no real requirement for you to fund this. And nobody will ever come to you and say, I need a check for $395,638 to remediate asbestos. So these are more accounting adjustments of future costs. Then it's not like your hydro bill that you owe next month. The other comment is because these are accounting related estimates, these aren't necessarily and typically included in your municipal levy. And so what you'll find is this isn't the case where you now have to go out and raise $500,000 to $600,000 in new taxes to fund these liabilities. You will pay these liabilities as you retire the assets and as you remediate the sites. And as I mentioned, for your landfill, in certain cases, those costs are 40 years out. So I just wanted to caution council, because it's not a small number, it's not an inconsequential number, but it's an accounting number. It's not, like I said, your hydro bill where you have to pay it next month. So your worship, members of council, very brief presentation of your financial statements and the audit results. As your treasurer has mentioned, financial statements have been discussed with council. I would like to thank you once again for allowing us the opportunity to be of service to the township. I would like to thank Michelle and the team at the township. We get great cooperation and great support from the municipality with respect to the audit. If there are any questions, more than happy to answer them at this time.
Does council have any questions for Oscar or Michelle? No, thank you. Interesting. Who gives this board the authority to change all these rules in the middle of anybody's year? I found their name, the Public Sector Accounting Board, but who are they?
To be honest with you, I will need to look that up.
Okay, so the rules just changed and we had no power. Okay, okay.
They do. And the comment that I make to my clients is, rest assured, nobody ever asked me what I thought. And I'm not trying to be flippant. It's just the rules change and there's always new standards that are coming out. Next year, for example, there's a new standard with respect to revenue recognition. It's always under refinement. They do, as part of the process, open it up for commentary and open it up for feedback. So they never just say, here's the rule. They always issue what's known as an exposure draft, where they say, here's what we're proposing, and they take feedback. So the firms always respond to exposure drafts. Industry groups always respond to exposure drafts. I think as a member of the general public, you're actually also able to respond to it. But yeah, it is the Accounting Standards Board.
Thank you. So I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the consolidated financial statements of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin for the year ended December 31st, 2023, and the audit findings report to the members of council for the year ended December 31st, 2023, as presented at the regular meeting of council on June 17th, 2024 by the firm KPMG. Could I have a mover to that effect? Ted and Ken. All in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Oscar and Michelle, for doing it so seamlessly. Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks. So I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the staff reports as presented on the agenda and the addendum for the June 17th meeting of council. And the first one, I believe, is going to be Taylor speaking to it. Or, okay, I need a mover to receive the reports. Kim. All in favor to receive the reports? Thank you. So we have a motion that bylaw number 2024-064, being a bylaw to amend the Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-030-011-01400, application number R 2022-0018-F for Marvell Limited is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. I need a mover. Ted. And Gail, okay. All in favor? Before I do that, are there any questions of Taylor before I take the vote? Oh, Councillor Bazinski has a question.
Taylor, have you had any feedback from the neighbors?
Through your worship, to Councilor Bazinski, yes, we have, the neighbors have been in steady contact on this property over the past couple of years. I don't believe their core opinions have changed since the attachments in the first staff report where they're not quite in favor of it. However, the staff report is structured in a way that site plan control would or should help mitigate some of the damage that has been done to date. So the fill and the site alteration and restoring a vegetative buffer.
Do you have a second question? Okay, go ahead.
So Taylor, given the history of the site and, I'm wondering about, can we require that all of these mitigating measures be done in advance of the construction of the storage units? Like my concern is that it was a residential area and now it's going to become commercial and you got residences adjacent to it. So, and given, that the work that was done really wasn't done in consultation with the township, is it possible to require that all the remediation is done to the satisfaction of the township prior to them building the commercial units?
Through your worship, I believe that's how the bylaw is set up. So if you look at page 91 of the agenda package, we're recommending that it be subject to site plan control, which requires that the planting plan, the stormwater management report, that the entrance be improved, dark sky friendly lighting, and fencing, which is wooden privacy fencing nearest the residential property and chain link around the remainder for security reasons. All be part of the approval, and that would be required before a building permit is issued. I don't believe, though, from looking at the plans, that the grading would be going back to pre-site disturbance. So they are working with the way that the grading is today. However, it's going to help buffer some of the impacts. The
Councillor
grading
Fallon.
plan is on page 93 if you're interested, where it kind of shows the lot layout.
Okay, Councillor Fellner has a question and Councillor Adams after that.
So Taylor, yeah, pardon me. Hi, Taylor. Glad you're feeling better. So I see that the setbacks have been adjusted since the first time this rolled through. Is that correct?
I believe the setbacks have remained the same. However, they are increased from the base bylaws minimum setbacks. So I do
Right.
have those in the staff report to try to better buffer and ensure compatibility between the neighboring property and the proposed.
Right. So I'm looking at the site plan here. What is the front lot? Is it Osler Park Drive, that part? Or is it Shaw Almax? Which is the front yard, which is the rear yard?
It would be the shorter of the 2 yards. So I believe that is Osler Park Drive. So let me just flip over to the
I'm looking at page 92.
yes, it is Osler Park Drive. That is the shorter of the 2 yards.
So that's the front yard. So the setback to the setback required to the extreme right of the drawing on page 92, that's 10 meters.
Yes, that is the interior side yard.
Okay, and that's where that's where there's a neighboring house there that was impacted. So I guess my second question is the planting plan for that hill, right? When we looked at it, quite a while ago, there was a lot of very large boulders, shot rock, kind of strewn down that hill, and there was a bunch of them down at the toe of the slope as well. So, and because it's all rock filled, the way the grade was raised with rock fill, and it's extremely difficult to get vegetation to take. Are we going to, or in consideration of asking for a bond for the maintenance of this vegetation? The critical one is the rear lot line. That's where the greatest impact to the neighborhood occurs.
Through your worship, just for clarity, the shared lot line with the neighbors, that's this interior side yard setback. Because it's a corner lot, so if council wants that one to be increased, that one today would be at 7.5 meters, so I just verified that. If that is wanting to be increased at 10 meters, we could easily do that. I just recommend a deferral and come back to a subsequent meeting. To answer the other question, yes, through our site plan approval process, we require 50% securities. And we typically, in situations like this, where there's a lot of vegetation, require a warranty for 2 years to ensure that it takes hold.
Right. Okay, so my thought would be to defer, increase the lot setback, because that's the critical side. And I think that planning's got to be done before, well, you already said it's going to be done before building permit. If we have to defer to increase the lot setback, then that's what I would like to see happen. If we don't have to defer and we can just specify an amendment to the document that's written, then I'm all right with that too.
Okay.
Okay, let's get the other comments. That is the location of the wooden fence, correct, Taylor?
Yes, that's where staff are recommending a wooden
Yeah,
felt
that's the
fence.
high wooden fence that will go there more than plantings. Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Adams, you had a call.
You say the fence is out where that rock is next to the residence?
Taylor, that just to clarify, where the fence is between this lot and the residential neighbor. Is that correct?
That, through your worship, that is correct. For the portion I'm thinking would be reasonable where there's a residential property line, so it wouldn't be the entirety of it, but where there's a residential use.
Yeah, because I was on site there and those rocks they're pretty much closer on the resident's property. And it is a bit of an eyesore for the residents. And I thought when I read the thing that the fence was optional, but the fence has to be put in.
Through your worship, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So Terry, what is it that you're asking for to be in addition?
I'm simply stating my opinion that I think that if that's deemed a side lot line and not the rear lot line, I would be more comfortable for the protection of the residents that's adjacent to it to see it go to 10 meters. Because the reality of it is it's built up so high, if the building's too close to the lot line, you're gonna see the top of the storage building from the guy's backyard. I don't wanna see that. Not right.
Councillor Adams?
Is it possible too to see this work done before the amendment to the zoning or the bylaws passed? To have this work completed? Okay.
Okay, Taylor, I'm getting direction from my expert clerk beside me. So the work has to be done before the site plan and the building permit come into effect. Is that correct?
The improvements have to be made after the site plan is approved, but before a building permit is issued.
Okay, and if Counselor Fellner has support from the other counselors to move the side lot setback of the fence to 10 meters, can that be written into the bylaw change?
So your worship, that is correct. That can, I would just ask that to come forward to the next council meeting, just so that we can ensure it's done properly.
Okay, so that calls for a deferral. You're making the motion to defer?
Motion to defer.
And, okay. Mario, okay. Two. Okay, so the bylaw will be deferred until July 2nd with the goal of increasing the side lot side to 10 full meters.
10 meters.
All in favor of the deferral? Okay, so deferred is, okay, thank you. Okay. And I believe this is Jason. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby allocate the necessary funds for a master plan for the MZO lands, which includes further environmental analysis, engineering work, and project management, and that these funds be taken from the Development Charges Deferred Spending Account. Could I have a motion to put this on the table? Terry and Ken. And I will turn the meeting over to Jason.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. As we continue the work on the MZO lands, we've been very focused on site-specific work with the developer, but what we have to understand is that the broader development goals of the MZO lands include not just one parcel, but all parcels. So planning for that requires a longer-term master plan, a secondary plan that ensures the infrastructure and the roads are considered to the scale of the development. Without that type of planning work done in advance, you could end up with fragmented and problematic and unplanned development, which we certainly want to avoid. As outlined in the report, we've engaged Ainley Engineering to provide some quotes to undertake the master plan and the requirements for a phase 1 and phase 2 Municipal Engineers Association class environmental assessment. They will, on our behalf, assuming council's in support, undertake a variety of work, including stakeholder engagement and all of the necessary studies that'll be required to move forward, including water servicing options, wastewater servicing options on the bigger scheme of the entire development. Also included in there is Hutchison Environmental Services. They've prepared a work plan that addresses a number of other environmental considerations, including amphibian, snake, turtle, aquatic habitat, lakeshore capacity assessments, bird vegetation surveys. They have done the preliminary work, which was done to establish the feasibility of the minister's zoning order, but at this time will require the detailed analysis. And to help us sort of navigate through the entire scope of work, we've engaged with MHBC, who's been a partner in the MZO from day one, to quarterback and project manage a number of these deliverables. The report outlines and provides as attachments some schedules, specific scopes of work for council consideration. And while it's not an inexpensive venture, I think it's worth highlighting that these funds are recoverable through the area-specific development charges background study, which is creeping towards closure, and we have a deferred account where we've been charging these things too. So this work and any associated interests that perhaps is accumulated over the period of time is all DC recoverable, and so therefore not on the backs of any of our current taxpayers. Happy to answer any questions, as is Taylor and Michelle have been instrumental in helping prepare this report. We're all here to assist with any questions you may have.
Councillor Bazinski.
Jason, can you guarantee that this is all cost recoverable under development charges? Because my understanding is that development charges doesn't really cover the preliminary studies like this. And I think I'd want some assurances that it wasn't going to be put on the backs of existing ratepayers, because as we've all said, development has to pay for itself.
I'll ask Michelle to jump in here, but I believe Michelle has engaged with Hempson Consulting, who is doing our development charges background study, and has confirmed this for us, that there is that these are fully recoverable. But I see Michelle's on the screen, so perhaps she can weigh in.
Yes, I have been talking to Hempson, and they did advise that these would be recoverable under these area-specific development charges.
Could you ask them to put that in writing and send it to council, please?
Absolutely.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess this will be for our planning department. Does the town have a development charge bylaw in place?
So are you asking if Seguin has a development charge?
Yes.
So we are in the process of undertaking the development charges background study, and we will have that before council later this summer.
So this right now is just for information only. If that's not in place, why would we be even starting to vote on this, moving this forward, if we don't have a development charge bylaw in place?
It's up to council if you want us to sit on this until the DC background study is complete. We are happy to take instructions from council and move forward how you see fit. There's a significant body of work to do here, and we've been running these in parallel with the development charges background study. We have instructions from council to develop that study, and it is in its final stages of being put together.
Yeah, because in order for us to, like, what we're actually doing here is floating the developer alone at this time. And we're putting out $1 million of taxpayers' money. And what I'm seeing is, like, how is this money going to be paid back through development fees? Is it through building permits? Is it through subdivision permits? I think we're a little bit premature at this time to even be voting on this until we have that information, because I'm not comfortable at this point of dealing with this. And I need that information, because if we don't have a development charge bylaw, why are we even taking somebody's word? Doesn't make any sense to me.
Development charges are collected through the building permit process. So at the time of building permit issuance, a percentage or an allocation is collected back to the development charges. Just to provide clarity, this is not for any one developer. This is for the entirety of the MZO lands, all 743 acres, so that there is a master plan for the entire development. And again, we are working on a development charges background study per council direction. We proposed it, council agreed and said, go ahead and get to work. So
Yeah.
while we don't have it complete today, it is creeping towards that finish line in the next, I don't remember the exact timeline, but the next 2 to 3 months, it'll be complete and before council for final consideration.
I would like to see it complete before voting on this, or even, like, I would take this report for information only and wait till the report comes back from our consulting firm or whoever you've hired to do the development charges.
Okay, I just want to remind council that we've had the presentation from Hampson Consulting. We did have that, and as Jason pointed out, we are not floating any developer. This is not for the land that has specifically been purchased by the developer. It is for the entire 700 acres that we need anyways. So it's incorrect to say that we are floating any developer, because we are not.
Oh, no, we're paying for a developer. Yeah,
No,
no,
no.
actually we are, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we are. At this point, until our CAO comes back with a finalized report that we have development charge bylaws in place.
Okay, but I
That's all.
need you to understand that the developer who owns land now is paying for his own studies on his own development. So we aren't floating any one developer.
Not right
Counselor
now,
Bazinski.
I know that.
Thank you. I'm just a little concerned because since we don't have a development charges bylaw in place, can somebody later on come back and say, well, you didn't have a development charges bylaw and et cetera, you get my point. So I do agree with Councillor Collins that I think we should have the bylaw in place first, and then it's quite clear, rather than trying to go back after the fact and recover some development charges. And Hampson did say that, waste management wasn't covered too. So I think it would be nice for council to have a much more clear understanding of what's covered and what isn't covered under development charges. But the other thing is, my experience in the past is that where you get large areas of development, developers do what are called block plans, and in that they will do all the host of studies. And I'm not quite sure I understand what the difference between the detailed studies that these consultants are going to do for the whole area. What in addition are the developers going to need for, say, a specific block, such as, Best Construction has?
So through your worship, this amount of work satisfies the class environmental assessment requirements, and what its focus on is core infrastructure, water, wastewater, and the primary roads within the development lands. The things I know, the questions come up multiple times about garbage collection and waste management. That is an operational service that is provided once people are living in the area, and we would have to assess the level of service at that time and perhaps apply specific taxation rates to those homes that have a different level of service than that of the rural community. But this project in particular focuses on water, wastewater, and the primary collector roads that will feed through the entire MZO lands. To the developers that are in ownership or are considering some of this land, the requirements that they're looking for is, where are we hooking up to our services and what are they? And if we can't offer them the ability to provide water and wastewater to and from their development, we're going to be very restricted on how and when we'll ever get to developing this property, unless we decide to move to a rural development with septic tanks and wells. So the developers are going to be required to do their studies when they are preparing plans of subdivision, but the core infrastructure of water, wastewater, and roads is something that needs to be studied. They will be on the hook for paying for it, the developers will, through development charges. However, we need to be able to provide them with this level of service and say, here's how and where and when you'll be able to connect.
I would
Bazinski.
agree with you, for the core services, water, wastewater, and roads. But when you start talking about carrying capacity for lakes and that type of thing, that's a different story. And the amount of detail that you need to go into, in terms of that, I think is more what the developer would be doing when he's designing his lot layout and so on. I would agree with you on the major infrastructure that the township needs to have a handle on that. But I think that a lot of the work that's being proposed, it goes maybe one or two steps further on.
Through your worship, I would suggest, Councillor Bazinski, and I don't mean to sound adversarial, but this is proposing a look at Richmond Lake as a water supply, not its direct impact on development. That's part of what will come from the developer. But Richmond Lake has been identified as a potential water source to provide fresh water into the freshwater system. Georgian Bay through Wasauksking, through the town of Perry Sound, there's a variety of different options that need to be explored to understand how and where fresh water gets delivered into the development. So just as a point of clarity, we're not exactly studying like we would on a private property, their impacts to the local environment today. That comes as part of the developer's responsibility when they're putting together a plan of subdivision. What we're studying is how and where is the fresh water coming from, and how and where is the wastewater traveling to, and what does the roadway network look like so that there's continuity from one parcel to the next. That is the scope of work that's being proposed here.
And I guess the fresh water has to come through a treatment option. So, would you have a water treatment plant adjacent to Richmond Lake, that type of thing? I'm not sure on, but at the end of the day, long and short of it, what I'm concerned with, and maybe if you can get an opinion from the development charges consultant, that all of this study will be recoverable under development charges, then I would feel a lot more comfortable that development is going to pay for itself. Otherwise, I'm concerned that maybe some of those studies that the builder could use, which is not a problem, but then he may be able to get away with it without having to compensate the taxpayers in the township.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Well, thank you for the report, Jason. But I think at this time that this council would be prudent to have this report in front of us as information at this time. And then when, we don't even have development charge fees. So I think we're putting the cart ahead of the horse at this time, and I would rather wait until the development charges consultant or whoever it may be comes back, and that we have a development charge bylaw in place prior to moving forward.
Jason.
Thank you.
Just to help council with some more information, the part of this report, part of this body of work that's being presented to council today is fundamentally important to the development charges background study process. We can make some assumptions around how we're going to service these lands with water and wastewater. In the very early stages of the MZO development, we considered two options. One was a sharing of services with the town of Perry Sound, which has not exactly produced any fruitful outcomes. The other option was to build a wastewater treatment plant and a water treatment plant, and the bill for that is, at the time it was estimated at about $95 million. what we're asking for in this scope of work is for the creativity, the innovations to be explored so that we can find out if we're charging through the development charges for a $95 million construction project, or if we can do it for 40 million. So it becomes, we can put a DC bylaw in front of council, make the assumptions that we need to make, and then amend later if that's what we need to do. But today, the best information we have is that if we are to build a wastewater treatment plant and a water treatment plant independent, standalone that services this entire property, the best estimates we have is from a previous engineering report about $95 million. So again, again, we're happy to take instruction from council here on how you'd like to move forward, but we certainly need to start studying to understand how we're going to service these lands and the costs associated with it so that we can then inform the development charges. It's a cart before the horse, or the horse before the cart is a tough, we're in a tough spot because we've never had development charges. We've never had urban services before. So it's
crucial.
and I understand the concern. This is not a insignificant amount of money. But again, we need to undertake a certain amount of engineering to be able to understand what we're asking through the development charges to be paid for.
Counselor Fellner is next.
I
Hang
have
on.
a follow-up.
Okay, one follow-up and then Counselor Fellner.
Yes. We don't even have the report back from the mayor and you going to Calgary when you were looking into sewer. So we don't even have that in this report. And I think there's a lot of assumptions here. There's a lot of words being said here, but to be quite honest with you, we don't have all the facts in front of us to make this decision at this time. For information, fine. Like you just said, we don't even have development charges fees. Yet we're going to be charging in the future for building permits or subdivision permits or whatever you want to say. But we just need to walk before we run.
Counselor Fellner?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I tend to agree with quite a few things that have been said at the table today. You have to keep in mind, I think, what this investment does. It takes the township to the next step. We've taken the first step and we've designated 700 acres that we're interested in seeing developed for the purpose of residential housing. We need to make an investment now to find out exactly what is the method of doing this servicing to the 700 acres, both roads, water, sewer. I take Councillor Bazinski's point that a confirmation in writing from our consultant that I think gave us a fairly lengthy presentation here some time ago would be prudent. I'm not so concerned about the passing of a bylaw because you can pass a bylaw and it's going to be redundant. It isn't really going to mean much. We already know we have the right to charge development as a municipality. We have the right to charge development charges, and we're only allowed to charge, to Councillor Bazinski's point, there's only certain things we can charge for. We can't make a profit on it. We can't take that money and spend it somewhere else. We can only recover the costs that we incurred, right? And the only way that you're going to be able to figure out what the development charges are actually going to be is to incur the costs. That simple. So for me, I'm not so concerned about passing a bylaw that's going to say, hey, we have the right to charge development fees, because we do. Whether we pass it today, tomorrow, in 3 months, I don't think really makes any difference. I would have a better level of comfort to have a letter or something in writing from the consultant that says definitively that that these costs do qualify under development fees and can be recovered.
Counselor Getty has his hand up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That was the same point that I was going to make. Would it make sense to defer it? Michelle says that they've indicated verbally. As Councillor Brzezinski mentioned and as Councillor Fellner mentioned, to be able to know that we are able to recover those costs. If we deferred it for 2 weeks, Jason, I guess a question to you, would there be any great operational impact to deferring it 2 weeks till we get confirmation back from the consultant, so that we would have a level of comfort signing off on $900,000 in fees?
Through your worship, I'm quite comfortable if council would like to defer and we can get that confirmation from Hemson on the DC component that everybody's concerned about, and happy to bring it back. I don't want to commit to 2 weeks. I don't know that Hemson will have I haven't consulted with them on whether or not they can produce the written opinion in that period of time, but as soon as possible, happy to bring it back.
Counselor Finson.
I just wanted to say I'm on the same line as Greg, and Terry, is that I think it's a necessity. I think we have to do it. And so if we got that confirmation, I would be fine without that confirmation, but I think that it's obviously wanted. So I would like to see it come back as soon as possible so that we can get a move on it, because I don't think anything's going to happen without it. That's what I think. I think in order to move forward, we need to do this. We need to support this and we need to do it. But I get that there's concern, and I think that's great if we can confirm that we can recover those fees. So that's all. Thank you.
I had already confirmed with our clerk that it will become an action item out of Mario's initial comment asking Michelle to get it confirmation. So that will come of it. I would like to say that we try and defer it within the next 2 weeks. I don't know, Michelle doesn't have a magic ball of how quickly Henson can reply, but let's aim for as soon as possible to get their commitment in writing. Councillor Brzezinski?
Yeah, and I just want to actually commend Jason for the good work he's done. I don't want you to take it as confrontation or anything like that. My real concern is just with the taxpayers of the township. I don't want them to be on the hook, and I know you don't either. You've done very good work. I'm still not 100% sure that some of this shouldn't be done by the developer directly, but I'm good to go if we can recover the costs. But anyway, so please don't take it as a negative. This is council being very cautious, because there are a lot of expenses that I foresee coming up in the future, and we don't want this to be an added one on the taxpayer. So thank you, Jason.
Councillor Collins, last comment on this.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want everyone to know that I'm not against the MZO at all. I just want to make sure we have all our ducks in a row before I'm going to commit another $900,000 to $1 million in taxpayers' money moving this forward. Thank you.
Okay, so I hear an interest in waiting for the written confirmation from Henson, so I need a mover to defer. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Just as before, Michelle was kind enough to just forward me an email from Hemson, and I'll just quote it. I won't go through the whole thing, but the studies are only being done as a result of growth and are only triggered to facilitate the development of these lands. I would say these studies are growth related. Bill 185 just received royal assent early this month, reintroducing studies into eligible capital costs. So we have an opinion in writing, but I will ask that be a little more formalized than just an email, and we will happily bring that back to council's attention.
Okay, I don't know whether it's appropriate, but just show them this document. Hampson, just send this document to Hampson and say, are these, so I have a motion to defer from Terry Fellner, seconder Mario. All in favor of the deferral? Thank you. And let's try and do it as quickly as possible. Sorry. No, it's okay. So there, okay.
The next item is 2.
Okay, I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-060, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a license agreement between the Corporation of the Township of Seguin and Jeremy Gordon McCabe for part of the original road allowance between lot 135 and 136, concession A, Foley Township of Seguin, being a portion of PIN 52182-1184 LT, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. And I see Taylor on the screen. Do you want to explain a little bit about it, Taylor? But I guess first I need to put this motion on the table. Can I have a mover? Ken? And second, okay, your turn, Taylor, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a result of a recently approved consent application. The license agreement just requires them to provide us insurance, but allows them the right to maintain a private driveway which crosses municipal property. So that's pretty standard in these cases. The 5126 or the consent agreement requires the submission of a water quality impact study should they ever increase the size of their septic servicing bed, which is in accordance with the official plan policies.
Does council have any questions? All in favor? That's carried, and there's a second part to this. That bylaw number 2024-061, being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with Jeremy Gordon McCabe related to an agreement under section 51(26) of the Planning Act RSO as amended, file number ARG 2024-0005-F, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Could I have a mover, Ken? And a seconder. Greg, all in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-063, being a bylaw to amend Township of Seguin zoning bylaw number 2006-125, property roll number 4903-10-004-09641, application number R 2022-0021-H, 1587208 Ontario Inc., Nessman, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Can I have a mover? Terry? And a seconder? Mario? Taylor, do you want to explain this one a little bit?
Certainly. This is a follow-up to last meeting's public meeting. Sorry, fumbling my words there. Essentially rezoning your property from an open space zone to a rural residential zone. We couldn't figure out why it was zoned open space. It goes all the way back to an early 1990s provincial condition of subdivision approval. Regardless, there is an increased setback from Turtle Lake to require the septic bed to be set back 300 meters. A wetland has been identified and zoned out, so that is also in accordance with the official plan. And ultimately, there were no concerns raised by the public, and it's in conformance with the official plan.
All in favor? Thank you, and that's carried. I think we have Tom now. You have a very comprehensive report. Tom, do you want to speak to it?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and members of council. These are one of the unfortunate council reports from Public Works this year and in a couple of years, but the March thaw, as everyone remembers, it was a couple months for us to actually get the roads back into condition. It was quite the thaw that we saw the spring, or sort of the winter into the spring, that fluctuation in temperatures, freeze thaw. Talking to counterparts in other municipalities, they saw the same thing. Luckily, we in Public Works and staff were able to track everything. You know, the good out of all this was the staff efforts. They showed up, and I gotta give kudos to as well to 6 or 7, even 8 different contractors who dropped everything and helped out Seguin and our forces. So basically what this report is the cost of that event in terms of gravel and contractors and getting the roads into passable shape. Basically under advisement of what that cost was, and we will do everything internally here to find some cost savings from operational and maybe through financial updates at the end of the year. We'll see if we can offset that cost and that burden that we've seen and we're feeling, unfortunately. Happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Adams.
Is there not an emergency fund that covers stuff like this? As far as,
I saw Michelle jump in if you want to answer that, but yes.
Michelle,
There-
with
yeah,
the weather, what's the bad weather?
There
What's it
is some
called?
emergency funding
Yeah.
that you can apply for, but that's only in the case of a declared disaster. Was not a declared disaster. We do have a $150,000 reserve that Tom refers to into the report. And that is something that we will look at the end of the year, utilizing that to help offset this.
is there not a way to put more in the budget for future years? Because we know it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen again. It's happened in the past.
Mhm.
So shouldn't we increase the budget a bit for things like this?
Absolutely, we can.
Councillor Fellner's next.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, to our Director of Public Works, a big thank you to you and your crew for dealing with this problem the best way possible at the time. And I think maybe the silver lining in it all is I would suspect that a tremendous amount of these costs were for the purchase of granular B. I know that it was used not judiciously in some places. It had to be basically poured in to stabilize these roads, and granular B is something that our roads are severely deficient on. The sub base of our roads is not a lot of granular B there. There's a lot of sand and then A gravel, and then the A gravel disappears into the sand. So I think, you know, it's a bit of an investment. This year, this is an investment. If this happens again, those sections of road that you fix this year, in my opinion, are not going to be nearly as badly compromised. I think the other thing it was indicative of, and you know, this council has been focused on increasing the amount of maintenance we do to the roads and the amount of improvements. I think that was, you know, made well known in the last budget deliberations. So I only want to caution you that although I find it commendable to see if you can pick up, you know, $380,000 somewhere between now and the end of the year, but we don't want your program to suffer. My personal opinion, we need to keep going. There's a tremendous amount of ditching, for example, that needs to be done. Maintenance ditching. There's sections of road that haven't been ditched in 10 years. And, you know, when you get all these types of remedial actions, maintenance done, you're going to find that the impact from these severe, in this case, was not a lot of frost in the ground, and what was in the ground came out like in a heartbeat, right? And then it just, everything turned to quicksand, so improved drainage, more structural fill, aggregate is only gonna make things better, so I'm fine whatever way you wanna deal with the costs. I would just like not to see it at the detriment of the maintenance we'd planned for this year.
I think Jason wants to comment and then I'll get to you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to piggyback on Councillor Fellner's comments, this is not just a Public Works Roads Department issue. This is a corporate issue, and we'll be looking across the entire organization on how we find and save those dollars for the year end bottom line without having significant compromise to levels of service. So I think I just wanted to make sure that we understood that, while Tom has the luxury of leading the charge with Public Works, it's not just Tom's problem to deal with this. We as an organization need to find where we can save a few dollars and not and do our best not to compromise levels of service along the journey.
Councilor Bazinski.
So Tom, tell us that at least we saved some overtime snow plowing revenue.
Mayor and council, thanks. Good question. It's actually the opposite. Issue is plowing's is cheap, to believe it or not. It's the amount of gravel and contractors, and frankly, it's a lot of hauling with our trucks as well. So it's actually a little more expensive, unfortunately.
If I could just follow up, because you do bring up a good point about heavy equipment on our roads. Do you find that now with all of the heavy truck activity on the roads that they're taking more of a beating than in the past?
So this will be 7 years that I've been here. It's been about the same areas, same amount of, it's the volumes, contractors going in, the Burgesses, the Blue Lake Road, Stanley House. It's the abundance and increasing, and now we have this large increase in population or permanent full-time. It's hitting quickly. And these cottage roads are, historically have always been, call it April to November, is now year round, and you're getting a lot more vehicles in the springtime, especially year round, and we're starting to feel that in our road infrastructure. So yes, it's increasing, but steady, I would say, and it's a lot more than it has been 7 years ago, but I still hear the same complaints, if not more frequent.
Thank you very much. Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. As long as we're not sacrificing service at this time, I would recommend staff's recommendation on option number 3.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tom, and your team for everything you did do, because as one of your team told me, I'm not fixing roads, I'm fixing chocolate pudding, he said to me one day. So it really was something, but I would also encourage all of council when we get to budgeting to think about what we put into our severe weather reserve, because it is likely to continue, as Councillor Adams mentioned. So I understand that you're recommending option 3, and I think you have council's support for that. Is that correct? And we'll look to all the departments to contribute to helping you fix it by the end of the year. So as Jason said, it's a corporate issue. So thank you for all the work you continue to do on the roads. It's not easy, and we appreciate it. And I believe that most of our ratepayers appreciate it too. Okay, and over to you, Michelle, I think, for the financial update.
Thank you. Yes, this is the first financial update of the year. We were actually waiting for the numbers from Public Works before we brought this before council so that we had some good information for you. As you'll see, there's the March thaw event that is leading the way for an overall operational deficit of $290,000 right now. We do have some savings. We do have some revenues that are already exceeding budget. And again, we will track those through to the end of the year so that we can help overcome this $380,000 March event. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Does council have any questions? Nope. But thank you very much. It's nice to see some revenues coming in above. So, and now from the addendum, you have item 7G, and I'll read the motion and then I'll ask Craig to talk to it. I have a motion that as per staff report number CL 2024-003, attached as Schedule A to this resolution, and the sign permit application submitted by Pro Signs on behalf of Mesqua's Discovery 2016, Inc., the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby approve a minor variance to the Township of Seguin bylaw number 2007-116, being a bylaw to regulate the size, use, location, and maintenance of signs and advertising devices within the Township of Seguin, as amended to permit the proposed LED illuminated wall signs to be located on structures at 7 Marina Street, and council approves the issuance of sign permits as per the application from Pro Signs on behalf of Mesqua's Discovery 2016, Inc. Could I have a mover for that, Ken? And a seconder, Terry? Does anybody have any questions for the clerk on this? This is the Rosso Marina moving forward. Okay, all in favor? Thank you. And that is carried. And I think we're back to Michelle here. The motion that bylaw number 2024-062, being a bylaw to write off taxes on properties in the Township of Seguin, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Again, I need a mover. Terry, seconder. Does anybody have any questions for Michelle on the tax write-offs? I think both are as a result of fire. All in favor? Thank you. And council reports. Gail, why don't we start with you?
I've been dealing with a few constituents on different matters and with staff who have been very helpful and informative, and it's all going well. I had a rec committee meeting, a special meeting, and to do with the bike rodeo as well as the Canada Day celebrations. They were looking for help and they found it. Had a meeting on June 12th, Belvedere Heights Governance Committee, which was, we were working on bylaws through them. So it was a very productive meeting. Other than that, like I've said, I've just been dealing with a few people on different issues, and all were happy with staff and with the answers they got. Well, at least mostly all. Anyway, and that's all. Thank you.
Ted?
Thank you, Maria. I just had a DSAB meeting last week, regular DSAB meeting, and that's all I have to report other than dealing with my constituents and residents. Thanks.
Councillor Fellner, Ward 4.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a meeting last week of the Municipal Corporation for the Pool Wellness Center. The site is well underway. Anybody that's driven by can see. They're predicting now the site works to be complete. Other than I think the connections out in the street in the early part of July. Nothing too crazy unusual with what they found on the site. They found some rock and they found, you know, some different things which will probably impact somewhat the cost of it. The rest of the tenders, I think, are pretty much, I think they said there was only 2 left, I think, to submit. And the overall impact of all the tenders for the actual construction of the building, I think, is maybe 100,000 over budget, which is just pretty favorable. So moving along, it's, you know, once the site work is done, then I think it's, you know, it's gonna start going in more of a hurry, more to see when you drive by. Other than that, I know they've had a few calls on the park to park. Nothing. I know our Parks Department's been up doing a little bit of work there, cleaning up some bridge approaches and things and making it a little bit more passable. All in all, pretty favorable comments from everyone. They seem to be enjoying the improved base on the trail. And other than that, nothing else to report.
Counselor Getty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first annual Seguin Health Fair was held on the 4th of June at the Ross Memorial Hall. We had 78 community members came out to attend. We're very impressed. We had 28 presenters from a dozen different organizations. And we had feedback comments that were given, all favorable, and a lot of requests to do it next year. So I think what we'll do is look to move it around the township and pick another one of the community centers next year and do it again. I'd like to just give a special thanks to Suzanne Powell, Phyllis Finson, and Rosie Whitaker. They're the committee members from the nursing station who were the ones who facilitated this going on with the help of staff from both the township and from the nursing center. And on the 12th, I had a committee of adjustment meeting, and other than that, that's about the most of it. Thank you.
Counselor Bazinski.
Yes, I, on the 5th, I attended an Otter Lake Ratepayer Association presentation. They commissioned a study to be done on boat wakes, which is becoming a serious problem on many of our lakes with the wakeboard boats producing mountainous waves and shoreline damage and the like. And to compound things, you always get 2 idiots on their Sea-Doos out jumping the waves as well, which makes a real noise problem, to add insult to injury with the boat wakes. So anyway, they have a study, and if you're interested in it, it's on their website. So if you Google onto Otter Lake Ratepayers Association, you can find the wave study on their website. Other than that, I've had comments. I circulated Dominique's memo about access points to one of the local contractors who does septic installations on Otter Lake, and he was quite happy to see that. So that should be good. And I've talked with a number of people about the Otter Lake Marina parking, which had been an issue and seems to be a little more resolved with Tom's actions. And Tom was telling me, our Director of Public Works, that in the fall, they plan to just put in a little bit of asphalt and angle parking, because parking is a real, or lack of parking is a real issue at that point. Thank you.
Ken.
On June the 5th, I attended the Canada Day special meeting, and June the 10th, I attended the chamber meeting. They're both by Zoom, and that's all.
Thank you. Going back to June 3rd, Jason and I attended what we had hoped would be the last meeting of the Economic Development Collaborative to get our money back. As you'll recall, we voted not to be part of it, but we still haven't resolved it. I think we're gonna have to go to one more meeting, but they know that Seguin is non-participatory. The health fair, congratulations, Greg, and everybody that organized it. It was packed. And it was nice to see people from Orville and faraway corners of Seguin coming to Rosso to learn what could happen. So I think it was a big success. We had a meeting with Lakeland to talk a little bit about airport hydro. Jason and I were at FCM in Calgary. I have to report that we were unable to meet with Minister Fraser. We tried, and our Member of Parliament, Scott Aitchison, tried to get us in front of him. We did not succeed there, but we did meet some consultants, and we learned a whole lot about, well, I call them plug and play septic systems that are not $90 million. Then we had an airport commission meeting on last Tuesday. And Wednesday was the pool or rec center board meeting. And then on Saturday, I attended the Rosso Lake College closing ceremony and graduation. One question I have, because it's going to happen before our next council meeting, is what's Seguin doing for Canada Day? Anything? Do we have a Canada Day celebrate?
Yeah, there's a
What
celebration
time?
at 11 to 3.
11 till 3, so
Yes.
no fireworks?
No,
Okay. We need to get that up on the website.
there's a meeting on this Wednesday and I can get more information.
Okay. Okay, do you have a report?
Your worship, members of council, just wanted to let you know, and of course to everybody listening, Seguin Public Libraries is encouraging everyone in the community to complete a short survey to help inform future programming. You can visit letsconnectseguin.ca to have your say, ideally before July the 19th, where the survey is located. Or of course, you can pop into any library branch and I'm sure get all the assistance you need there. Representatives from the township will visit Wasauksing First Nation on Wednesday, June 19th to celebrate the installation of the last custom crosswalk created in collaboration between our two communities. These crosswalks, as you see throughout the community, are designed and are based on artwork designed by students at Wasauksing's elementary school. Seguin's annual free family fun night is this Friday, June 21st, from 6 to 9 p.m. at the Rosso waterfront. There'll be a barbecue, live music, a magic show, and much more. All are welcome. Seguin's water quality team has completed their annual spring testing program. Their findings from the 48 sites tested have been sent off for analysis and will be shared with the public later this year, providing essential information about the health of Seguin's lakes. And last, but certainly not least, the Rosso Memorial Hall is turning 100 this August. The township is working with partners in the community to host a day-long centennial celebration on August the 16th. There'll be live music, tributes to the hall's history, refreshments, and more. Watch our website and social media for more information in the coming weeks. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby receive the board and committee minutes and agendas and the correspondence as presented on the agenda and the addendum for the June 17th, 2024 meeting of council. Can I have a mover? Thank you, Mario. All in favor? And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby proceed to a closed meeting at 3:58 p.m. in order to address the matters pertaining to a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality, a trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality. And this is regarding Belvedere Heights that was moved from the open part of the agenda, and a acquisition plan procedure criteria or instruction, again, related to Belvedere, to any negotiations carried on. And litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals related to the Maple Lake petitioner's submission on Camp George. Could I have a motion to move into closed? Ted and Terry. All in favor? Thank you. Record. So I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby rise from the closed session and declare the regular meeting reconvened at 5 p.m. exactly. Could I have a motion? Terry. Seconder, Mario. All in favor? And this is now the resolution regarding Belvedere. So I have a motion, oh, just how it starts? Okay, okay, it's not a motion, okay. Whereas on April 5th, 2024, Belvedere Heights Board of Management received the long-anticipated letter from Ministry of Long-Term Care declining the request to relocate Belvedere Heights to a campus of care. And whereas the Ministry of Long-Term Care has requested that Belvedere Heights Board of Management express their intention regarding the addition of the previously approved in April 2021, 24 beds to Belvedere Heights. And whereas the Ministry of Long-Term Care has provided the requirements to qualify for the recently announced maximum $35 per diem construction funding top-up by a November 2024 deadline. And whereas the Belvedere Heights Board of Management financing plan does not require new funding from its municipal partners. And whereas time is of the essence to comply with the Ministry of Long-Term Care recommended milestone for municipal owner approval by June 2024. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council for the Corporation of the Township of Seguin endorses Belvedere Heights Board of Management request to apply for final approval from Ministry of Long-Term Care to build up to 24 new long-term care beds at 21 Belvedere Avenue, subject to the following conditions. 1, that the proposal meets all of the Ministry of Long-Term Care requirements, including approval of the required financing plan. And 2, provision and approval of the final cost estimates. And 3, provision and approval of the municipality's proportionate share of the required capital costs. Could I have a mover? Ken, and a seconder? All in favor? And that's carried. I have a motion that bylaw number 2024-065, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of meetings of council, is hereby deemed to have been read a first, second, and third time and passed by council. Mario, seconder, Ted, all in favor? Thank you. And I have a motion that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Seguin does hereby adjourn this regular meeting of council at 5:03 p.m. to meet again for a special meeting of council on Monday, June 24th, 2024 at 2:30, by the way, or at the call of the mayor. Okay, moved by Ted, seconded by Terry. All in favor, carried. Thank you, everybody. Ken,